I discovered my wife's secret life through social media, so I filed for divorce and was granted full custody of our son. Hello everyone, I'm a 39-year-old man working as a receptionist at a hotel. My wife, Jessica, who is 34, works as a nurse at a hospital. We've been married for 12 years and have a 10-year-old son, Robert. Our life together was pretty straightforward and typical. Though we often struggled financially, we managed to get by. Jessica was an amazing partner and mother, sharing the burden of our challenges, which made things a bit easier for both of us. I didn't earn much as a receptionist, so I also took on extra shifts at a food hub. Our schedules were often conflicting, but we treasured our weekends together. Our son, Robert, usually spent his days with his grandparents and came home with us in the evenings around 9 o'clock. On nights when Jessica had overnight shifts, Robert would stay at his grandparents' place. Our marriage was steady, a blend of peaceful moments and occasional stress. I was always grateful for Jessica's unwavering support during tough times. We were both somewhat absent as parents, which often saddened me, but I believed it was necessary for our well-being. Things took a strange and troubling turn after Jessica returned from her friend's wedding. A lavish 5-day affair. I had been invited too, but due to my work commitments and the need to save money, I decided to stay home. When she returned, she was unusually quiet. I asked if she was okay, but she snapped at me, so I decided to give her some space to settle in. However, her growing coldness and silence started to worry me. She wasn't just quiet, she was noticeably irritated and wouldn't tell me what was bothering her. A week later, Jessica finally erupted in frustration during dinner. I casually asked her which movie she wanted to see that night. She initially ignored me but then became agitated, snapping that she found my question irritating. When I pressed her on what was wrong, she told me she regretted marrying me. She said all her friends were living their dream lives while she felt stuck and unfulfilled, and blamed me for not being the man she needed. She lamented that I hadn't provided her with the life she wanted, questioning when I would take her out to the theater instead of just staying home to watch movies. She said many other things before standing up and leaving her half-eaten plate on the table. I remained silent, having sensed this outburst was coming. I understood her frustrations were valid. I decided to step up my efforts to find a better job and increase my income. The following day, Jessica didn't return home at her usual time, claiming she had to work extra hours at the hospital. Robert and I waited for her, but as it grew late, I tucked him into bed and eventually fell asleep myself. Jessica returned around 4 o'clock a.m. I asked her to come to bed, offering to take care of the housework. I wrapped my arms around her waist and tried to initiate intimacy, but she snapped at me, asking me not to touch her. I respected her boundaries, but her reaction made me feel like she was repulsed by me. I tried to stay calm and went back to sleep. The next day was Sunday. When I called her for breakfast, she came down looking visibly irritated. I asked her what was wrong, and she replied that she wanted to buy herself a set of lingerie and asked for my credit card. In that moment, I couldn't refuse, so I handed it to her. The card had the money I had been saving for Robert, and I felt quite uneasy about giving it to her. I asked if she could wait a week until my salary came in so I could buy the lingerie for her instead. She threw the card on the table, calling me stingy and accusing me of not even buying her basic things. I grabbed her wrist and apologized repeatedly, pleading with her to take the card back. She eventually took it, kissed my cheek to thank me, and left. Her phone was on the table and started buzzing. I picked it up and noticed notifications from various social media apps. I was about to unlock the phone when Jessica came downstairs, so I quickly set it back on the table. She took her phone and went outside. Later, I took Robert to his grandparents' house, and on the way, I received a notification from the bank about a $1,200 debit. I stopped the car, my hands on my head, stunned by Jessica's actions. I dropped off my son and called Jessica, asking her to come back home. She came back home, and I confronted her about the $1,200 purchase and how she could spend such a large sum in one go, especially since I had been saving that money for the family. She listened, tears streaming down her face, and started blaming me, saying I had ruined her life and couldn't even meet her basic wishes. She claimed all her friends were living luxuriously while we were stuck at rock bottom. I told her she was acting irrational and greedy, reminding her that she knew my financial situation before we married. I had always done my best and continued to do so, and she shouldn't blame me for our circumstances. I asked her what had changed. Everything seemed fine a few months ago. Why was she acting this way now? She sat in front of me with guilty eyes, apologizing for her behavior. She explained that at her friend's wedding, everyone was wearing designer clothes and carrying luxurious bags and accessories. Her friends had made her feel embarrassed and asked if her husband wasn't doing enough for her. I felt sympathy for her and forgave her. I asked her to understand that not everyone can afford the same lifestyle and that we were both trying our best to navigate our situation. I told her she shouldn't feel embarrassed but should be proud of her independence. She hugged me and we finally got intimate again after so many days. I felt happy and content, believing that the ups and downs were what made our relationship transparent and meaningful. However, things soon took a downturn. Her phone started buzzing with text messages from an unknown app, but I couldn't see which one from the lock screen. I intended to check the messages, but the password was incorrect. At first, I didn't press the issue and asked her for the password, mentioning the texts. She didn't provide any details or her password and casually took her phone and left the room. When Jessica fell asleep, I quietly took her phone and tried entering the password, but it failed again. I was annoyed and puzzled as to why she had changed it. Just as I set the phone back down, it started buzzing again with a series of notifications, which was quite troubling. The next morning, I went to work and dropped Jessica off at the hospital. Yesterday was our wedding anniversary, and I remembered it but pretended to forget, planning a surprise for her. After dropping her off, I returned home and decorated it with warm lights and a romantic ambience. Robert was going to stay at his grandparents' that night. I was filled with excitement as I prepared her favorite meals. Once everything was set up beautifully, the door opened, and Jessica walked in. Her tired expression transformed into joy when she saw the romantic setup. She ran to me and hugged me tightly. We had a wonderful time together, and eventually, we sat down to talk. She told me she loved the effort I had put into the surprise, but she wished we could have gone to a fancy restaurant if we had the money. She also mentioned a friend whose husband had gifted her a diamond ring. I started feeling insecure, realizing that she wasn't satisfied with what I had done to make her happy. I listened to her quietly, faking a smile. I didn't want to argue with her on our anniversary. To divert her attention, I began taking pictures of us, but just as I was about to upload them, she asked me not to post them. She mentioned that our home and everything about it looked cheap, and she didn't want her friends to see them. Her harsh words made everything seem worthless. The food, the flowers, all seemed insignificant in her eyes. Jessica came from a well-to-do family, and though she had never shown greed before, she had never complained about my modest earnings. Suddenly she seemed so materialistic, and I was still struggling to process my thoughts. She went into the bedroom and called me after a few minutes. She emerged wearing red lingerie, looking incredibly stunning. I approached her, intending to kiss her, but she stopped me, asking me to take a few pictures of her. We had a good time, and the rest of the evening went smoothly. The next morning, I received a call from Robert's school and rushed over. When I arrived, the teachers informed me that he had gotten into a fight. I asked Robert why he had punched his friend. He told me that his friend, James, had been making fun of his mom, saying that she had been fired from the hospital. James' mother also worked as a nurse at the same hospital where Jessica was employed. I couldn't believe what I had heard. It might have been just a rumor. If it were true, why hadn't she told me? I left for work, unable to process the whirlwind of changes in my life. I sensed something was wrong with Jessica. There was definitely something she was hiding. I wasn't outrightly accusing her of cheating, but she was definitely up to something. Update 1. Hey everyone, it's been a week since my last update. I've been dealing with a lot and have finally decided to divorce Jessica after uncovering the truth. After hearing Robert's rumor, I couldn't sleep for days and felt the need to find out what was really going on. This morning, I drove to the hospital and asked the receptionist to call Jessica, introducing myself as her husband. The receptionist gave me a puzzled look and exchanged glances with the woman at the counter. She told me that Jessica no longer worked there. I asked when she had left, and she said it was a month ago. I inquired about the reason, but she didn't provide any details. Her expression suggested she knew something bad but didn't disclose it. I left the hospital, feeling confused and furious. As I was about to get into my car, James' mother waved me down. She apologized for her son's behavior and said she shouldn't have spoken about such things in front of him. I nodded, telling her not to worry. She then mentioned she had something important to tell me. I had a feeling I knew what it was. She explained that after Jessica returned from her friend's wedding, she seemed very insecure and fixated on money. Initially, she thought Jessica's complaints were normal, but it didn't stop there. Jessica had created an adult profile on social media. I was so shocked that I felt numb. She told me that Jessica had been fired because she was caught making obscene videos and taking naked photos in the hospital storeroom. A janitor had seen her, recorded the videos, and leaked them to the staff. That was how everyone found out. I asked her for the name of the social media app, and she gave me her number, saying she would send me a link to Jessica's profile. She urged me to stop Jessica, warning that it could cause problems for Robert at school. I asked her not to discuss this in front of James, as it would only make things worse for him. She agreed. I felt so disgusted that I wanted to throw up. I had never felt so worthless in my life, and I blamed myself for everything she had done. I convinced myself it was because I had failed to provide for her. After crying my heart out in my car, I decided to gather all the evidence myself before confronting Jessica, knowing she would likely feed me lies. As I was driving back, I remembered seeing a new profile suggestion on my social media a few days ago. The profile picture showed a woman in red lingerie, but her face was hidden. For some reason, the woman's back had reminded me of Jessica's. I had clicked on it, but it led me to an 18-plus adult entertainment site. I had thought it was just another promotional gimmick of an adult dating app and dismissed it. Now I realized that social media often shows suggestions if the person is in your contact list. That woman was definitely Jessica. Everything started to connect in my mind, and I felt uneasy and anxious. In the evening, when I got home, I found several packages on the couch: dresses, heels, bags, and more, all newly bought. I pulled out the bill from the sofa and almost choked when I saw she had spent $900 on lipstick alone. Jessica came out of the room, looking scared when she saw me. I showed her the bill and asked where she had gotten all the money. She angrily threw the items from her hands onto the floor, telling me she regretted marrying me and felt trapped by our poverty. She insisted she just wanted a few things for herself and asked what the big deal was. She complained about why her life always had to revolve around our son or the house, and why she couldn't spend her savings on something she loved. I almost laughed at her manipulative tactics but pretended to be clueless. Taking a deep breath, I asked her again where she had gotten all the money. She looked at me and said she had been promoted to a different healthcare center and they paid her well. I nodded and walked outside for a walk, trying to process everything. James' mother had texted me Jessica's adult account details. Without even opening the account, I knew it was hers. I put my hands to my face, feeling too afraid to see it for myself. But the anger and daily humiliation she had subjected me to were unbearable. I realized she had sold her body to the public for material things and had destroyed our 13-year marriage. I searched the username, and it matched the account I had seen in my suggestions a few days ago. I created a new account with a fake profile and followed the steps to access her content. To see her material, I had to subscribe, which cost $200, a significant sum for me, but a small price to save myself from daily humiliation. Her profile was titled "Your Personal Nurse," and after subscribing, the account finally opened. My palms were sweaty, my mouth felt bitter, and I nearly vomited when I saw those pictures. The images and videos were horrifying, but the comments were even more terrifying. Half of the content was hidden behind even higher rates. What shocked me further was that she had posted the pictures I took on our anniversary. Those same pictures, which I had cherished, now looked repulsive and disgusting to me. The comments were outrageous, and I couldn't bear to look at them any longer, more like I couldn't bear to look at her anymore. I immediately decided on divorce. There was no time to waste, so I called my brother, who worked for an attorney, and asked him to help prepare the divorce papers. When I returned home, Jessica wasn't there. She had left a note saying she was going to work a night shift. The ironic part is, she's supposedly jobless. I don't want to spell this out, but God knows what kind of night shift she's on. I don't think I'll be able to sleep until I confront her and humiliate her the way she insulted me. And for that, I didn't have to do anything because she did it all herself. Update 2. It's been a while since my last update, as I've been dealing with severe trauma, and the divorce process has been harder to navigate. The morning after my last update, I woke up to Jessica yelling at Robert, telling him to stay the F*** away from her expensive things. He was apparently messing around with the items she had bought the previous night. This ignited a fiery rage in me. I told Robert to go to his room. I gave Jessica a cold stare and asked her again where she had gotten so much money. She put her phone aside and asked if I had lost my hearing ability. I laughed at her comment and told her that at least I hadn't lost respect for myself the way she had. She looked completely oblivious and asked me what I was talking about. I told her to continue with her personal nurse business and that the divorce papers would be served to her soon. She understood where I was coming from. Her username on the adult website had given her away. She sat on the sofa, looking ashamed. I told her not to feel ashamed or regretful after getting caught because it was her own choice. She began to cry, saying she couldn't endure the insults she faced in front of her friends and cousins, who flaunted their luxurious lifestyles while she felt trapped in mediocrity. So she took that path and bought herself expensive things. I yelled at her, telling her that a modest lifestyle was still far better than exposing her naked body to the world. If she wanted to pursue that, she should have told me. I know it's her body and her choice, but she didn't need to keep me in the dark and should have been open about it. I told her that I knew why she got fired from the hospital and that our innocent boy had to suffer the bullies at school because of her fantasies and greed. Her body language suggested she had no remorse. It felt like she was going to continue this behavior after our divorce, and every tear seemed like an act, not genuine guilt for what she had done. She suggested we could find a middle ground and that I couldn't take our son away from her. I told her it was impossible to spend my life with someone who could expose her nudity to the world for easy money. I knew she didn't care about our son at all. I asked her if she had any idea how humiliating it would be for Robert when he found out from his friends or people around him that his mother sold her nudes for a living. Had she considered the consequences we would face because of her greed? She remained silent and then started arguing, saying it was partially my fault and that she had no choice. I told her she clearly had a choice, and she chose to be a whore instead of being broke. Her face disgusted me, and I left the house with Robert for my parents' place. I worked overtime and did as many jobs as I could for her and our son, and still she was an ungrateful, disgusting, immoral check could never accept such a person back into my life. I've been living with my parents for the past week. Jessica hasn't tried to contact me or our son. The divorce papers are supposed to arrive in the next few days, and I want this to be over as soon as possible. Update 3. Hello everyone. I finally got rid of my ex-wife. The divorce papers took a few days to reach her. During the divorce process, Jessica and her parents filed for complete custody of Robert. I almost lost the case. They portrayed me as a poor and unavailable father who never did anything for my son. As I mentioned, her parents are well off, and they claimed I wouldn't be able to provide a good life for Robert. That's when I decided to bring up her job and question whether she was a suitable guardian for a 10-year-old. I couldn't leave Robert's custody to Jessica's parents. I presented evidence of her immoral acts and explained how her actions would harm Robert's mental health and social standing. I didn't want my son to go through bullying, and that's how I secured complete custody of him. Robert himself wasn't particularly attached to his mother, but I allowed her to see him whenever she wanted. Jessica's parents and siblings blamed me for her actions, saying she took that path because I couldn't give her the life she deserved. They never wanted Jessica to marry me, and this whole scenario gave them another opportunity to demean me. The joke's on them actually if they can see it. Anyway, I don't care about anyone now. I'm just happy to have a peaceful life with my son. I lost a fortune going through this, but it was worth it. As for her, I heard she's still on that adult site selling her nudes to make money. Thankfully, I didn't forgive her and dodged a bullet.